it's a great time to build a business in India, a SaaS business in India. There are many communities and a lot of, second time, third time, fourth time entrepreneur, a lot of people who've been working in large corporate and took a lot of best practices. So I think there's a lot of that knowledge that you can tap into and leverage.
Everyone who is joining, welcome everyone. And today we will be talking about SaaS startups. We will be talking about investment in SaaS, basically, how the SaaS startups are being looked at from an investor's point of view. What are the things that you need to keep in mind when you're building SaaS startups, and basically everything revolving around SaaS. So welcome, Alice. Nice to have you here.
Yes.
And I hope we can be a part of some good discussion. So before we start, let's say India is right now known as the SaaS capital. Like, there have been a lot of these startups which are coming from India. There are a lot of these, there has been this notion, build in India, build for the world. And a lot of SaaS startups are finally doing that. So let's basically get started with that. Like, how is the whole VC ecosystem is looking at that, and how are the investors, and what are some of those disruptive SaaS startups from India that you have seen?
Yeah.
Let's get started with that.
Cool. Right. Well, first of all, I'm glad to be here today. And, absolutely, as you were saying, we're seeing a lot of great companies that are from India building for the world. And I think as I look at how Jungle, but as like most investors are looking at these kind of SaaS companies, they are usually looking at kind of the different types of SaaS companies. Are you building for your domestic markets? Is that a large enough opportunity, or do you have to be kind of global from day one? And I think in a lot of cases, in a lot of time in India, what we're seeing is that investors get a bit less interested with the pure domestic SaaS companies built for India. And there are many reasons to that, and we can touch upon that. And a lot of investors are actually more excited with, from India to either Southeast Asia or the Middle East, or from India to the world. And obviously we have been tracking that as well quite extensively. And a lot of these SaaS companies would actually be following product-led growth strategy. And you don't even have to have a really big sales team out of the US or, out of other markets to actually get to a very big size. It's definitely one option to have your sales and marketing people in the US, but you can also have very nice product-led growth companies that are really leveraging the end user and starting and scaling from India that way. And then only looking at adding more salespeople or marketing people in your local markets like the US or Europe. So definitely a very exciting type of companies, the India for the world. But just going back to what you were saying, there are few categories of SaaS companies. Obviously, you have your vertical SaaS. You would have your more horizontal platform. You would have SaaS infra or even hardware-enabled SaaS, and then also what I call SaaS with a twist, which will be your marketplace, your SaaS-enabled marketplaces. And all these twists are also great ways for you to kind of expand your original market size, which some investors might seem too small in India alone. So just reflecting and looking at one of our early investment in India, a company called Moglix that you probably know of. They started with...
It just turned unicorn.
Yes. They started with, a pure SaaS product, which was helping with your the procurement for your industrial goods. And, eventually they added the marketplace, and somehow you are just maximizing and opening up a lot your market opportunity. So what could have been seen as a slightly limited TAM initially in a fairly, low-tech, unsexy space, by being able to add the marketplace angle to it, you're expanding your market, and then suddenly it becomes, VC would have more appetite. So obviously the India for the world is a massive trend, and it's great. But there are also ways to build a slightly more domestic or regional SaaS company from India as well.
So if, like, apart from Moglix, if there are, let's say, 3-4 different SaaS companies from India, or let's say Southeast Asia, if you have to talk about, what would those companies be?
Sorry, say that again. If we were to look at other players like Moglix?
No, I mean, apart from Moglix, if there are, because that's what I asked in the beginning as well. Like, what are some of the disruptive SaaS companies from India that you see?
Yeah. So we have been tracking a lot of Indian SaaS companies. Some are trying to disrupt, a lot of your conversational channel. So they might be helping with enabling your salespeople to do a better job by providing a lot of real-time queuing and helping you convert faster. Some would be looking at again in the conversational AI space. They might be helping more on your customer success or customer experience. We're spending a lot of time looking at a lot of dev tools, and that's another great way of building from India, making sure you get the first set of users and then scaling beyond India. And there again, a lot of companies built from India. We have looked into quite a number of interesting cybersecurity companies again out of India with a SaaS angle. And obviously, logistic is a massive space, and there are many ways you can disrupt and many ways to look at the value chain in logistics. So many industries where we are seeing a lot of great SaaS companies.
Okay, so just to basically update it to our audience, I will basically be asking some of these questions. The first 20 minutes are mine, and after that I'll be opening the floor for the questions. So if anyone has any questions, I already see a couple of questions which are there. So I will be taking all these questions after the first 20-minute mark. So I hope that's fine with everyone, and I hope to see some more questions in the chat box by then. So basically, Alice, talking about the disruption and talking about, in SaaS, you don't really define your market, right? So, and that has been basically defined as in, just like you mentioned in the beginning, you don't have to have a big sales team in the US if you're selling to the US sitting in India. And the same thing is happening in Southeast Asia as well, and which I know is also one of these important markets for Jungle and one of the key areas for Jungle. So apart from India, let's say if we talk about some of the interesting business models in SaaS, which like a lot of us know, but in your personal experience, if you have to just maybe name 2 of those companies which you think came up with great interesting business models, what would those be? And if you could just talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, sure. I started and so first of all, I would say, Jungle, we have invested in a lot of Indian companies. The companies I will talk about now are companies we've, interacted with over the last 12, 18 months. They may not be part of our portfolio. But, as I was saying, we looked at a lot of conversational AI companies. So, one of our most recent conversation was with SalesCan, where, they are building a tool to really help empower the sales managers, but also the sales reps to sell better with a lot of real-time queuing. And I think that if you look at the broader market opportunity, there's a great and very large market. Some of the existing players in the US, like Gong or Chorus, they are not providing and solving for the real-time. And so we really liked what the tech they had built and all of that, which I think is super exciting. And I think there are many more of such companies that, now are reaching a stage where the tech is strong enough to help them with some of the previously challenging pieces, like having a real-time solution. And the same goes for your customer experience or customer center. So I think that's super interesting. On the more dev tool side, we've been talking to Lambda Test, Sura, and a few companies like that, and a lot more that are even more at a seed stage now. And again, these companies are building phenomenal tech, leveraging the talent base in India. and really expanding in the US. And both companies have raised quite significant amounts. I think Lambda has just closed a larger Series B last week or a couple of weeks back.